The number one challenge was, how do you run a massive organization with a minimum of financial resources? Banking sector is one of the most demanding. The fintechs are working in a very complicated sector.
Who set it up? Like whose company is it?
The company was formed by the central bank. Within a few years, all the banks at that time acquired some shares, in a sense that money will be able to flow from one institution to another in a secure and most convenient way. To make a breakthrough in the fintech sector, your product should be able to compete with cash.
True.
And you know what? Cash is zero fee. When you hear we want to go cashless, think about that challenge.
As a CEO, when you were still at RSwitch, what would you say you're like, these are the 2-3 things that I'm really proud that I did while I was there?
I managed to maintain the best technicians we had. That was...
How did you do that? More team building events?
Banks are not financed. And within the banking sector, the number one important source of capital is deposits. You are not charging to the bank anything.
What does a cashless economy help us achieve?
Let me break it in a very simple way. Most of the investors outside will ask you, who is advising you? Who is your auditor? Who has been building this policy for you? We can give the same service with the same level of quality and even beyond. That's where we want to be. The same way the country is striving to get enough doctors is the same way the country needs enough professional accountants.
All right, Mathieu, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. You're pleasant.
Amazing. It's great to have you here. I know that we've been connecting online for quite some time now. Been a bit familiar with what you're doing, and it's exciting to today unpack some of the key things in your life and trying to understand how you got to where you are today. So how about we kick off with, could you tell me about your early career, right? I know that you grew up in North Kivu, but specifically what I want to understand is what influenced what you studied in university?
As you mentioned it, right? I grew up in DRC, in the eastern part of DRC, Goma mainly, and my first step at the university in Rwanda, in E28. Let me tell you that my first career actually was to sell dictionaries in cell phones.
Interesting.
It may sound crazy. I went to the university mainly with a purpose of understanding the finances which are driving the world. The idea was quite clear to me. I had an understanding that getting more knowledge about how finances are led, it will help me maybe solve some of the problems which were very stringent in the region which we are in. And speaking about the career, I think it was in my third year of university, and I used to love cell phones, maybe mostly the Nokias, the big Nokias, and the first editions of BlackBerry. I used to have all of them, and then I found a way to download dictionaries in phones, and some of my colleagues actually started asking, how do I get them? And that was the exact time when changing from French to English was becoming challenging in the country, and then everyone was saying, can I actually have the dictionary in my phone rather than carrying the big Larousse? And I made some money out of it. So, I loved leveraging on technologies to make my life and to and to even do business. And I was lucky in the middle of my career to actually work in the technology space. Starting, I was mostly working with audit firms in the private sector, with Deloitte, and in the public sector. I did around 6 years working with the Auditor General of Rwanda. And then immediately what I did was to try to diversify finance and making sure that it's going to meet somewhere with my technology ambitions. That's how I felt very motivated to work, to advise a telecommunication company in Rwanda to advise on how do they break through financing their technologies. It's a big challenge, and I can tell you that technology as one of the beasts which are driving the current world comes with many challenges. The reason is because you realize that most of the people creating technologies, they start them from a technology understanding. Finances comes later. How will I sell it? Will it make money? Are there people to buy it? These are some of the questions to someone who has been focusing on developing the piece of technology. These are questions which comes later, and they may affect you so hard. And in my understanding, that already defines most of the reason why most of the technology startups get to fail along the way. Yeah. It's because they think about how it's financed later on.
Yeah. Very interesting. So you're working at the Auditor General, right, for about 6 years, right? Mm. And then in your head, you're like, okay, I need to do something in technology, right? Mm. Why not start there and incorporate technology in how they run their processes?
Well, that was very difficult for me as an employee of a government organization. That seemed was really not under my immediate docket. Also, because the profession of audit itself is governed by standards which cross-cuts the world. So that's a space in which you don't wake up and innovate.
Yeah. Yeah. And this drive of technology, right? So you have a finance background, right? So you studied finance in your school. Why not pursue something in technology as well? Did you think, okay, maybe I need to become a software engineer myself as well, or not?
There's something good I did. It was to attend a Master's of Science in Financial Engineering. It's quantitative finance, and we learn to utilize quantitative methods and softwares and codes to being able to develop complex models, financial models, and mostly to predict the cost of an investment, to predict the cost of statistics and economics. And I think that was even the first time I had to learn the basics of Python, the basics of and anything about technology. And I think I got to learn about technology the hard way. The hard way, which is having working with a team which knows what they're doing, and then getting to learn by practice. By practice. But that program actually increased my understanding about what are technicians facing as challenges, what can go wrong if you don't back up your codes with enough security, with enough space. All of that. And it came when I was in the middle of my career within RSwitch, actually. And it helped me understand and orient the team in a more quantitative way. Making sure that we use data in our day-to-day decision-making, which was very amazing.
You talked about RSwitch, which is an organization here at the intersection of technology and finance, right? How did you move from working at the Auditor General to becoming the head of RSwitch?
I can say that I passed through many things along the way. I worked in BSC, providing internet as they are providing financial advisory. And I actually landed in RSwitch, let me say so, out of a one-to-one discussion with a former CEO of RSwitch. It came like a challenge. I was taking a coffee with him, and he was explaining how the company has been facing financial challenges, and I said, "Give me some time. I take a look, and I just get to know what it is." And I could not understand how that organization was actually facing such challenges as if it was anyone's organization. I mean, the organization had as investors almost all the banks in Rwanda. This was the list of shareholders. That was number one. Number two was what the company was doing was to make sure that all these financial institutions can flow money electronically within them in an interoperable manner. And by that time, and I believe even up to date, it's the only licensed organization in Rwanda to do so as a payment service operator. To me, it was a challenge. I was not getting it. And I said, my friend, let me step in. Let me make an impact. I'm going to use all my neurons and crack it. So the number one challenge was, how do you run a massive organization with a minimum of financial resources? And
when you say massive organization, what do you mean in terms of employees or the amount of money you're flowing, or what's massive in this case?
Massive is number one in terms of mission. It's nationwide and even beyond. Number two, it's in terms of employees. The company had some of the best technicians who you can't even replace so easily, because what they are doing is unique in the country. So the option to cut them was not there. And the technologies they are running. you can imagine the banking sector is, and the data which is being treated in the financial sector is some of the most secured in terms of the standard needed. And that means having very reliable systems and technologies and very expensive ones. Just securing them itself was a nightmare. So the idea was, how do I quickly recover? How do we quickly break even? And making sure that the organization remains stable, afloat, at least up to when investors will have enough trust in the organization to inject in their own money. It's a challenge which I believe most of the funders and startups which are trying to break through and move from one step to another are passing through. But at that size, I mean, it was very difficult to move because, for example, you needed, for you to even make a change in any of the technologies, it was not easily going below 1 billion of Rwandan francs, of course, to apply a significant change in what we are doing. And I can tell you that the banking sector is one of the most demanding. The fintechs are working in a very complicated sector. The banks are very demanding. They need you to be at the top of everyone else. There's no institution which will want you to say, I come second or I come third into this, because they don't want to take any risk. Yeah. And it's one of the challenges anyone who is looking to work with a bank will meet with, because there's already a list of organizations which are doing so and so. So if you are entering, make sure you are fast.
Yeah.
Or you really have something which outstands on the market. Yeah. So we had our dose of complexity, and after working, leading the finances, let me say so, because I started as the chief finance officer. After leading the finances from 2019 to 2021, I was entrusted to lead the organization now as the CEO. We managed to get out of the financial bottleneck, if I can say so, and the organization at least had enough fund to innovate.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it's a long story, and I mean, anytime you want to ask me something about it, I can tell you. But let me move to the next step now, which was making sure that any resource you get in the organization makes sense to stakeholders, makes sense to the clientele, which is very demanding. That's how we managed to make certain steps. We managed to pull out of the crowd some of the best payment systems. There's a new beast in the market coming, which is called eCash. I'm sure it's
I think I've heard
now becoming popular.
Yeah, I've seen it on social media and stuff.
You'll be amazed to learn that the system has been into policies and into almost everyone in the country has been supporting it for a decade.
Yeah. And Maybe just to take one quick step back for people who might not understand what exactly RSwitch is, or so who set up RSwitch, right? And I know you talked about its goal was to make sure that the banks are collaborating and flowing money easily in the country. But who set it up? Like, whose company is it?
Initially, the company was set up by the central bank, 100% the central bank, mainly because the central bank actually wanted as well to innovate it into technologies.
Yeah.
Because at some point, I believe the financial institutions may not make it their focus to develop technologies, and I believe it should always be the case. So the central bank took that initiative, but the idea was to strengthen it and privatize it as it was done. So in 2002, the company was formed by the central bank, and within a few years, all the banks at that time acquired some shares in the company, and the central bank remained a very minority shareholder. That was the same spirit which continued to drive the organization with the same mission of making sure electronic transactions are developed, they're improved continuously to the expectations of the financial sector, in a sense that money will be able to flow from one institution to another in a secure and most convenient way.
Yeah. Maybe you can educate me a little bit. Is this a common practice in any market where the central bank sets up these kind of entities to facilitate that, or do you see? Is it different in other markets? Is it more private sector led, or?
I can say that it's very common. Most of the countries take that initiative, and even up to date, there are some countries where the national switches actually sits within the central bank as one department. Yeah. But for I believe to ensure independence, to ensure innovation, it needs to come as a separate institution.
Yeah.
Because also the regulator, I believe, do not want to self-regulate.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's really what I was thinking about as well. Also, is it because the reason why the government sets up these kind of entities, is it expensive to set it up as a private sector, or like what is stopping, let's say, an innovator to say, oh guys, this is a problem, I feel like I can tackle it, here's a better solution, here's a much better solution to do that? Like, what's the process of setting up something like that, let's say?
Well, I can tell you that though it started as a public organization. Yeah. Today it's private, and in terms of market size, if you look at transactions which are done nationwide, those which passes through RSwitch do not cross 20%. The remainings are within the private sector. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, the private sector is these big organizations we know. Yeah. The biggest fintechs we know. You can list them: Mastercard, Visa, most of them are not Rwandan organizations, but private sector is really driving the payments industry in Rwanda currently. And it's even good that today the organization is also responding to that need and complementing it.
Yeah. And how does an organization like that make money?
It makes money, number one, by pricing their products. So there's always a per transaction cost, which is defined taking into consideration the efforts it will take to process it, and to leave something for the organization, actually, for the employees to feel very rewarded. Exactly. And for the shareholders to take something.
Okay. So you mean when I transfer money from my equity Rwandan bank account to my I&M Rwandan bank account, that fee, is there a cut of RSwitch? RSwitch takes a cut, part of like the agreement with the banks, right? Or
I think it's just a service fee.
Okay.
Let's if we take it in a general sense, that fee is always very subsidized, and it will come at a cost which, if you try to do it by your own means, you'll have to charge more than that. So no one really feels the burden of it. And that is one of the principles of a good fintech pricing policy. And that is a very important point about the fintechs. Why? Because today everyone is price sensitive outside here. You remember when MTN came with mobile money payments, merchant payments, zero rating the transaction. And when the fee was applied, I can bet a big chunk of people started taking a step back. So that is that's just to say how people are price sensitive. And actually, if you want to make a breakthrough in the fintech sector, your product should be able to compete with cash.
True.
And you know why? But cash is zero fee. So trying to compete with zero is not an easy task. So everyone, before they pay, they ask themselves, does it make sense for me to pay that fee so I can transact digitally? Or I just use cash and everyone gets out of the transaction very happy. So the idea is to always reduce the transaction fee to the point that you say it's trivial, it's insignificant to the decision making of the transaction initiator. It's when you hear we want to go cashless, think about that challenge. Competing with zero fee. In zero fee world which is within the cash system.
Because now that I'm thinking about it, and that's exactly what I had in mind. Because in my head I was like, trying to convince someone, start transacting on Momo, this is the fee. And somebody's like, no, I actually don't mind walking there and actually paying in cash, right? And I don't have to pay this fee. But then I'm thinking, is the best way to convince people to pay the fee? Is it to tell them that it's convenient? Like you're paying 200 francs because it's more convenient than walking there? Like, is that or was that the initial, trick to get people to go cashless? It was like, you don't have to walk.
Well, that's the idea. Generally, from different studies, it is generally agreed that the cost of carrying cash is around 2% of the transaction. That is the cost to make sure that your money don't get lost, to make sure that the person you paid will not tomorrow say that you did not pay him. That's the cost to handle the cash in transit and at rest, which gives it a sense, saying that if I had to pay with cash, I would need to go to the bank, withdraw, and that's transport, that's time, and maybe it's that 200 Rwandan francs which we are mentioning. However, the narratives in Africa are not the same as where fintechs started. It was in the US. It was, the first organization to break through within the fintech sector was Visa in the US. And when you think about that, for example, the saying that time is money, we do not feel it the same. Think of a farmer, because in all of Africa, I can firmly say that the agriculture sector takes at least 50% of the economy. So take the life of that typical farmer. Can we really say that time is money for him? Because he can go to the farm in the morning and in the afternoon,
relaxing.
He's got enough time to go to the bank.
Exactly.
He's not really stressed enough. So, which again pushes back the pressure to the price of that transaction. Is it really equal to the convenience which I'm going to get?
Interesting. Never thought about it that way, but definitely learning something there. So what would you say were your biggest or most proudest moment as a CEO when you were still at RSwitch? What would you say you're like, these are the 2-3 things that I'm really proud that I did while I was there?
Well, number one, I managed to maintain the best technicians we had. That was...
How did you do that? More team building events?
Team building is also expensive.
Exactly.
I think the idea is to being able to transfer your passion into to everyone else. Because definitely in the life of RSwitch, my former employer, or in the life of any startup actually, you can say that you are paying everyone at a high standard. How can you as a startup really say that you are paying your programmer at a very good rate? It's difficult. So the only way to sustain them, to sustain the human capital, is being able to transfer your passion to everyone, to the technician, to the person running operations, to the person running finances, to the point that they can even get an offer and they say, I don't want to let down the boss. I will not feel very happy leaving this organization and seeing it fail. Which really gives you the number one objective of being very honest with everyone, rewarding them logically, rather than financially.
And how did you give me a practical example of how you do that, right? Because This is a problem that every startup entrepreneur faces every day. Oh my God, this developer started off, they were amazing, they loved what we were trying to do, we built something together. 1 year down the line, big company just took them. Big bank just gave them an offer. They give them an offer that even for you, you look at it and you're like, I can only literally send you a recommendation letter. Please take it, right? Because we were very far from giving you what they're offering, right? And actually, I would be very selfish if I wanted to keep you in that sense. So give me a practical example of how maybe one instant or something that you did that helped you to be able to maintain some of your best tech guys or girls.
I think number one will be making sure that you connect them with the persons you are serving.
Okay.
That means if you have customers or potential customers and that they need your service, make sure that what drives the customer to you is known by your people behind. In our case, for example, it was COVID-19, where everyone had to stay home to socially distance. And so we had to make sure, for example, MTN and Airtel get to transact together. The reason to that was because I remember as a student, I always had a Tigo SIM card, but when I started being paid, I registered an MTN SIM card. There is that understanding that we have two networks and one has got these characteristics, the other has got these characteristics. So you'll find maybe 50% of persons are using this network and 60% that network. Maybe that can represent who is paying and who is getting paid. So if at home, you need to pay someone who is in the other network, and you can transfer money between one network to another. That means we are breaking the normal life of how people are getting paid. And that was a very important narrative to bring to everyone, telling them, look, we don't know when this pandemic is going to end. We are the only solution. We are the only ones who have been working on it in the country. So let's not take forever to define it. And the struggle was real. I remember, for example, one of the employees coming to my home, just impromptu, knocking on my home and saying, Mathieu, I have issues. How did you get here? So instead, for example, pushing that person away, you welcome him. You ask him what is happening, how can I help? We are facing the same situation, how can I help? That's how you get people to stay with you, believing that you are working on the same mission. That to me is the first power which you need to have. Make sure that you maintain the people. Of course, number two is making sure that the organization outstands expectations. And in my past employment in RSwitch, the number one solution we were working on was to launch the instant payment system called eCash. It was formerly called the Rwanda National Digital Payment System.
A very long name.
Yeah, very long name. If you abbreviate it, it will look like a political party.
Exactly. It sounds like a ministry.
Yeah. So it's that system which makes payment flow and being confirmed on both ends within less than 20, less than even 10 seconds. So what it means is that money flows from the initiator to all the intermediaries, the banks, the switch, everyone, and get confirmed within the same 10 seconds. This is, many people may not easily understand what it means, but I don't know if you remember, for example, the times we used to send money to someone, and the only thing you get when you are trying to send the money is to put in the account number. It was to put in the account number of the person, and nothing was telling you that here is the name of this person who is in this financial institution. So the reason was because from one institution to another, you need to confirm information. The institution need to share information. All that process is governed by payment standards, and eCash is transforming the way we do payments in Rwanda. And the country has really been fighting to get it live, to materialize further the cashless economy ambition from the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank, the Ministry of ICT. They have been really spearheading all the efforts as policymakers to make it, but the organization had to make the technologies, and the technologies were there, but were not totally correct and totally secure. 6 years, a long time of working on a piece of technology. Yeah, it went live. I remember it was end 2022. In December. And today I'm very happy that it's going well. More and more functionalities are coming in. There's a strong team to work on it. The momentum has been increasing.
Just to again look at some of the concepts here. Rwanda is pushing a lot on the cashless economy. For the average Rwandan or the average African, right? What does a cashless economy help us achieve, right? Because again, looking at other countries that might be a little bit developed in terms of like GDP wise, but then cash is king, right? And there's cash flowing everywhere, right? I think when you go to other African countries, you see a lot more cash than you see in Rwanda. People just counting money, right? And some people might be like, the average person might be like, that gives you a sense that there is money in the economy, right? And you can make money. There's a feeling about getting paid in cash as opposed to like receiving a Momo transfer that you feel you give it value, right? So from a government standpoint, right, what does a cashless economy and what's behind the push for a cashless economy? Is it because it helps us understand how much money is in the country so that we can tax it better? Like what's really the drive there?
Let me break it in a very simple way. Take banks as baskets.
Yeah.
Equity is basket A, BK is basket 2. And we all get financing. I mean, a big part of financing comes from these baskets.
Yeah.
The money today I'm going to get from the bank is not necessarily mine.
Yeah.
It's the money which is within those baskets. So when the money is not in those baskets, development is limited because less people get to borrow within the banks. Deposits are minimal. So cash is money which is not in those baskets. And the latest statistics I had was that cash into circulation was more than 50% of all the money which was issued outside here. So it means the deposits within the banks are half of what they should be, or even more. And Rwanda has been innovating on that. I can tell you that in some of the countries, cash is 70, 80%. So banks are not financed. And within the banking sector, the number one important source of capital is deposits, because deposits are not interest bearing. When you deposit your money, you are not charging to the bank anything. Yeah. So that lowers the cost of capital within the bank. Mm-hmm. Because any money which is not deposit, it means the bank had to borrow it at an interest rate.
Yeah.
Mm. So it's saying it in a nutshell, bringing all the cash within the banking system in a digital form, it replenishes the deposits which are going to fuel economic development.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, let's say when the level of cash is at 10%, maybe we could be enjoying the same less than 5% interest rates which we see outside here.
Yeah. Very interesting. But you do know that from an average person's perspective, receiving cash, transacting in cash feels more like a real transaction, right? They want to get money because for a person, it's like, yeah, I get money in cash. I take 5,000, I pay for my transportation. I take this, I pay for my goods and services, and then I continue about my life. And I put the other under my pillow and I sleep. It's secure. I wake up, I transact, right? So for them, they never really think about either way. If I put it in the bank, it's going to create all these different barriers for me to transact it because now I need a card. Now I need to dial whatever. Now I need to transfer to this other person. It's going to cost me 200 francs for each one of these. But if I have my cash, and most people, right, if you look at, like traditional business people, right, they think that an economy that is successful is an economy where there's cash moving around.
That's exactly the other way.
Yeah, exactly, right? But then again, for the average person, it's not really that clear. It's it's the other way around. They never really understand the point for these things. But yeah, very interesting, man. Cool. So you're RSwitch. What happens after?
Well, what happened after was as I was saying initially, I think I define myself as a mission-driven person, and I'm always working towards something.
Yeah.
And eventually, at some point, I felt that I'm attending the initial objectives which I had, and I believed that there could be other persons to drive the next phase of the organization, which made me recommend and recommend that someone else thanks on the leadership. But also, what was driving me was the number of projects and ambitions which I had. So I had this consultancy firm since 2016, the idea was we are living in a world which is multifaceted, very complex, and I wanted to pursue more impact, being able to support more than one institution at the same time. And why not supporting those which are in an urgent need, like medium, small, even starting organizations. And that's the reason why really I said there's a number of projects which I need to revive. There is expertise which I've got, and I want to spread it at a larger scale. So the organization is called Trustees and Advisors. We recently renamed it because of regulation to RG Partners. It has been striving to provide financial and investment advisory. In my previous experience, I worked within the investment banking sector, and also looking at the fields of interest in terms of knowledge which I've been acquiring. They are all centering towards being able to advise institutions on the right course of their finances and their investments. So that's what we are doing. We are advising institutions which want to make an impact within the financial sector, using technology and using sustainable means. The organization itself is a member of the UN Global Compact, which means we have got to deliver on SDGs in all the projects which we pursue. And there's one ambition, coming back to the mission. Yeah. Coming back to the mission which I have within that organization. I was very lucky to work with an insightful person, the Dr. Kaberuka, within Southbridge. And in the time I spent working with him, with the organization, I quickly understood how we as Africa, we are very limited in terms of getting to the maximum level of production. If you take everyone at the same level in the world, today, a young person who has got a solid project in Africa, or let's say even in Rwanda, and the same person who is sitting in Europe, in Israel, in US, and so on, they do not have the same chances of multiplying the idea, of getting resources into that idea. Eventually, his idea, the other person's idea, will get to the market very fast. It will get enough support, financial support, number one. So, from different studies we did, Africa is not financed enough. Africa is undercapitalized. So we need capital. And where will capital come from? So from my previous works, we have been working on mainly fundraising for, I think the lowest of projects I worked in my previous work as an investment banker was to finance at the level of 10 million of USD. It is true, the work was very good, but when I think of the life of every Rwandan, every African, that is an amount of money which can serve more than 10 organizations, more than 10 startups, which have got brilliant ideas. So I wanted to decentralize that to have a larger impact and serve the young generation, which I'm still part of. So what we are doing, after still thinking about it and trying to imagine what we can support, we came to realize that there's still an amount of work which needs to be done for our organizations to be ready for investment. Readiness to investment is very critical. Why? Because if you look at the minds of every founder, you realize that they are dreaming of an international investor. But remember, the international investor may be investing at the same time in the US, in a Chinese, and in a Rwandan company. What are the chances that that our African startup will be run or will meet the same checklist of that person? Because that person will have the same checklist. Information which you need to get, assurance which you need to get in terms of the solidity of the project itself, its financial viability, in terms of the team itself, how is it run, and these are things which we wanted to work on. We said, it's true we want to attract a lot of capital, but number one, can we work on having investment-ready organizations? So within trustees, we have one team of analysts who are focusing on making organizations ready for investment, and another one which is actually looking for the investment, fundraising. So that's what we are doing. And the work which we are doing may range from helping organizations, for example, to set up the right pricing. We discussed about pricing earlier. There are a lot of products outside here which are priced in a way that will never recover all the efforts which you invested in. And that, in most of cases, pushes innovators and founders to look for finances in an extraordinary manner. Like, for example, eating the capital itself. Instead of eating the profit.
Yeah, exactly.
Which would come out of it. So you need to have the right pricing of your products, your fintech products. You need to structure your finances in a way that is attractive to investors. And you need to diversify the level of risks which an organization needs. For example, as you are starting an organization, yes, most of the effort comes from you. But from someone who is investing, he's saying, okay, but Mathieu is still a young person. How do I know that tomorrow he's just going to change his mind and disappear in the nature? The solution to that, for example, is to have a team of people who will be thinking and taking the high-level orientations, setting up a corporate governance team.
Yeah.
This is one of the ways you diversify the risks from the eyes of an external person, a stranger who has got money in his pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a number of other things.
Yeah.
So we have recently been licensed by the ICPA to provide at a larger scale assurance services, like financial assurance services, audits, and that goes hand in hand with our different financial advisory services. And for us, it puts the company on the standards of those who have been advising the sector, but at a times 10 cost. Take an example of a Big Four advisory firm. You know them, they are known. Most of the investors out of here will ask you, who is advising you? Who is your auditor? Who has been building this policy for you? And they want to see those names, if they know. So what we are doing is to being on the same level of standard with them, with the same organizations. We say in Rwanda, there's only one regulator for those services, and they have got the same license as ours. But we are focusing on the technology and the financial sector, and we can give the same service with the same level of quality and even beyond. That's where we want to be, at a much lower cost.
Yeah.
So that's what we are striving for. Of course, the idea is not to give free cards or free services, but the idea is to make more impact.
Yeah.
And being able to see an ecosystem which is bankable.
Yeah.
We earlier had a conversation about how can we ensure that as the private sector, we provide all the investment which is needed by innovators in our region, by the champions. Like let's say BAG is looking for 5 million of Rwandan francs.
Yeah.
Do we really have a list of private investors? The reason why I'm saying private is because, number one, I know there are public and international investors, and the country has been working on that element so well, very well. There are structures to make sure it works and get enough investors. However, those investors will need a track of experience. They will need to speak with one investor who has been footing in the business, and to tell them a story about how that investment or how the experience has been. That's why developing a private sector which understands that investing in their own organizations is as beneficial as the typical investment which people do, buying pieces of land or real estate.
Yeah.
We want to have an ecosystem of investors who will be saying, look, I have my 50 million Rwandan francs. Instead of putting it in real estate, maybe which is going to benefit 20% a year, I know of a startup which can give me more than that within 5 years. And they decide to do so not because there is a policy, not because the government is telling them just invest 50% and we will do the 50%. They need to feel that it's as profitable as anything else.
Yeah.
That is what has been driving economies outside of here. The private sector takes the lead and it removes any fear
Yeah.
to any external person because they know it is working. So that's what we are doing.
Yeah.
We are working on a number of initiatives in partnerships with other organizations. Myself, I've been a founding member of the Rwandan Angel Network, but we as trustees, we are also working on other initiatives.
Yeah.
We are thinking, for example, of launching an accelerator program, which is going to look at something else, maybe focusing on students while they are still at university. The project they have can if Stanford is investing 1 billion in within a number of years in their best ideas, why can't a university here invest a decent budget?
Yeah.
If you are so confident that you are teaching the students
Yeah.
to the point they are ready to go to the market,
Yeah.
can you invest into them? We are thinking of initiatives such as that.
Yeah.
In partnership with other organizations. We may get the chance to share about that.
Yeah.
But our work currently is to make sure that we develop organizations which are bankable,
Yeah.
which are as solid as any other organization. To the point, someone will not have to say, oh, let me invest in a Rwandan startup because they have got maybe something which is outside of the business
Yeah.
understanding of it. Yeah. We want to have organization which speaks for themselves, and we believe it's going to be complementing other efforts which the country is driving,
Yeah.
and even facilitating them further.
Yeah. Very interesting what you guys are trying to build. Can you give me an example or a case study right now of a typical company that you're working with? What the problem they came to you with, or the problem they had when you guys started working with, how you guys helped them, in what specific ways, and eventually what that help benefited them. If it's attracting funding, if you help them raise the funding as well, that would be even great. If you can give us, because one thing I'm trying to understand is two things. Number one is I want to understand in practical sense who your ideal customer is. Right? Ideal company to work with.
Yeah.
Also at the same time, how the traction, basically, what you've been able to help that company achieve.
Well, I don't think it's
I know you have many, but give me one.
well, there's one specific organization which is providing internet as an internet service provider in the East African region. I think we don't need to mention the name. So the organization was doing well, and it was initially serving corporates, NGOs, international NGOs, UN organizations.
Where the money is.
The money is. Business is good, however, limited. So organizations are known. Within 5 years, you cover them all. So they wanted to do something else. They said, why can't we go in the private sector, in residentials? But before coming to us, actually, they started implementing that idea. And they realized that at least 30% of their sales do not come back. Mainly because the initial setup of the business was we sign an agreement, at the end of the month I bill, and you pay. And they confirm the payment. Since it was a list of known organizations, it was easy. But when you are dealing with persons, these are people who can disappear. These are people who can take 1 year before paying an invoice. If you say someone is going to consume and then you charge them. And so the majority of their clients was consuming services and paying later. So our advice was this: let's work on digitizing your payments, making sure that your technical systems can speak with your financial management systems. You bill. When the payment is confirmed, service is released, data is released in your routers and devices. So, but the idea was not to make only that innovation in the payment and being able to recover enough. The idea was rather to make sure that they can scale. Because if you are thinking of scale, you cannot rely on invoicing. You need to make sure that there will be self-service. Persons will be able to request for a service without signing agreements, without even speaking with you, and being able to sell the company at some stage. So we are overcoming that. But that was the step which I was referring to as making the organization investment ready. When you are having more than 30% of receivables which have gone, receivables, and I mean people who owes you money for more than 1 year, it's a red flag for an investor. So the next step is now attracting those investors which are looking for an organization which has been having positive returns in the market, solid systems, less risk. Today, we are working on a pipeline of investment with them, with big investors in Rwanda and outside of Rwanda, for a ticket which goes to 10 million of USD. So this is an example of a success story, which we are looking to multiply.
And so in your typical processes, right, with your customers, do you find yourself approaching them or they approach you? So do startups say, oh my God, I have this huge challenge of people not paying me, who can help me solve this problem? And then they look for you. Or do you also find yourself trying to identify key companies to work with and say, hey guys, let me come and pitch what we can do for you guys. But also I want to understand as well your business model in a sense. Do you, for example, if you approach a company, do you charge them and say, give us the money and then we can solve your problems? Or do you say, we will solve the problem, then you can pay us in this way? Like how do you approach that? So first of all, how do you get customers?
And
how do they pay you?
Okay. We get customers, number one, reaching to them, making sure that we are at the center of conversations. We are into forums. We are at the places where people in need will get to see us. It's not typical that organizations of our kind do marketing. So we don't do marketing, but we rather show our capacity. That's what we are doing in most of the cases. However, we are also opening ourselves to opportunities which are open. So if you are putting out a tender about this, we have someone who will look at it and work on it. So that was about how we get our clientele. Number two, it's about you asked about how do we get paid. We try to be very innovative in that space. Because in most of cases, you struggle explaining to someone what you are going to help him to achieve. And so even paying it, people don't get to understand how am I going to pay you this much money? So what we do to make sure that we do not become a burden, we try to take some risk as well. As an organization, which means we select those organizations we know their projects is as impactful as my life. So let me take some risk. So we sign an agreement, of course. The agreement may say, I get any coin once the project is successful. I can say in 80% of cases, that's what we are doing. And a big part of the projects gets successful. Those who are not successful, we just say, we are going to start over again, maybe in the next phase. And that's how we price our solutions. For investment, it's always on a success fee.
Of course.
Which gives you the room to start something, and then see the beauty of it later on. Except if we have to do things which would require a significant investment of money at upfront. For example, getting an expert into a specific aspect who is not part of our team. In that case, we may want to charge something like a retainer, which is not as well very significant. And even that retainer always gets deducted in the success fee. So it's like an advance. That's how it works.
And then again, it goes back to who are your ideal customers, right? Because there is, once you've started working with a bunch of companies, you're starting to realize which ones you want to touch and which ones you're like, we better not even touch this company because it just doesn't make any sense, right? So when you look at that, what do you think Yeah, what are you realizing? Who are the typical people where you can create more success stories? What do they all have in common, let's say?
I think the only limitation we have is to work with organizations which are leaving behind a massive amount of emissions, in a sense that developing them would mean worsening the environment we are living in.
Yeah.
And of course, making sure that we are not powering an organization which will be laundering money in the future.
Yeah.
But so we are looking for organizations which can make a positive impact in our communities and in a sustainable way. It means if today you are an organization which is cutting down the number of processes a patient in a hospital would need to go through to get the service or to pay using technology, you are definitely part of our docket. And technology really is open to any sector.
Yeah.
We are not into forest and agriculture.
Yeah.
We're into anything, anything which leaves a positive impact on the society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so if you were to summarize so when you look at these companies and you say, these are the companies you want to work with, what would you say you and your team are really good at, right? Because some organization might be like, yep, we are the best when it comes to just matching with the best investors. We are amazing when it comes to just looking at your business model and we can, figure out ways of helping you fix that. We are really good at product, right? So what would you say you and your team are so far? You've seen that we are really good at these kind of couple of things.
I can say that we are good at understanding our community, and the challenges which are being locally faced. And two, we live in the current times. In terms of the country and even Africa, the biggest part is the youth. The average age in our company is maybe 35 or 35 years. And so this is what we excel at. We develop a very deep and comprehensive understanding about the challenges which are being faced by our communities in Africa. And from that, we can think about the solutions in a correct way. Secondly, the fact that we live in our times. We are young people. It means we are very energetic, and we do not easily step back. We don't easily get demotivated.
Taking another turn, can you tell me, you've been in the financial industry for quite some time now, right? I think there's also a lot of young people who are very interested. I think we can see right now, Fintech is the most booming sector all over the world right now, right? Especially now in Africa, when we're realizing all these challenges that not developing Fintech solution is really causing to our economies, right? What are the opportunities that you see in the financial sector that technology can come and solve that are still not tapped in, right? Because there's a lot of young people who are watching or listening to us and they're like, yeah, I'm really passionate about numbers, I'm passionate about finance. I can relate to Mathieu's story, like I'm also passionate about this industry, but I'm struggling to identify where, I can put my effort in. Like, what can I build in the financial technology sector that is still not there? Do you feel like it's it's saturated already, right? Other people are like, too many fintechs. We just need one. Or there's still opportunities, and what are they?
I feel that the market is not yet saturated. Why? Because, for example, in the fintech sector, we are at least 5 years to having local fintechs, which can cover at least 50% of transactions which are done here.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like MTN Momo has covered everything.
So, well, that is the reality. As I was saying, we are at least 5 years from seeing local fintechs processing at least 50% of the transactions. The reason I'm saying this is because, number one, the transactions themselves are not very wide as you could expect. When you look at lending, I presume that there's still huge opportunities. We are still not tapping on such markets like which would offer to anyone the possibility to get credit so easily. Our technologies are offered different possibilities, leveraging on emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning, to making sure that they offer more than the typical service. Take an example, a very simple example. Are there ways me and you, a typical person today, as you sit here, you can know the right or the most matching credit facility which a certain bank can offer without going to the bank? And in most of cases, actually, if you see it, you'll realize that even the banker expects you to come seeing him after knowing what you're looking for. The technologies which are currently available gives us the possibility of having a more personalized experience with the banking sector. I should be able, for example, to know that from my life today, from the transactions I do, if I want 10 million of Rwandan francs and I go to the bank, I don't need a mortgage. That piece of technology should be able to exclude that from home. Exclude maybe an overdraft. Exclude maybe this, and tell me you are the most matching possibility is this one. So there's still huge possibilities to contextualize and utilize these technologies in our day-to-day life and solve some of the most challenging situations we have. And in my understanding, the market is not saturated. Why? Because we don't see a very well-established bank thinking about that kind of solution. It normally starts from someone who has been in the market, or maybe who has been facing those challenges. And this is the young generation. They should take that initiative as their mission And secondly, one of the other opportunities in the financial sector is knowledge itself. Coming out of school, just look at the typical programs we have at school. There's no one who will tell you fintech technologies, how they work. They teach the basics which you should have as maybe a computer science engineer, or even a financial expert. You need to know how to you need to know what is an interest, how to calculate it. But no one will teach you the risks which are faced by nowadays communities. No one will teach you how to solve them. So there's an element of learning beyond what is naturally provided. And that being said, in our world, for example, of professional advisors in the financial sector, we are still understaffed, in the sense that even if you look at a national level, the government itself is managing enormous efforts to increase the number of investment professionals, accountants. The same way the country is striving to get enough doctors, is the same way the country needs enough professional accountants. And by professional accountants, we do not mean someone who comes from university. We are looking for someone who is able to practice accounting and provide the right financial information an institution needs to make their decisions on. So there's huge opportunity in learning, making sure that you position yourselves to international standards. So the opportunities are not only here, they are still in Africa. We still have a huge knowledge gap in terms of the number of professionals who comes. And I'm sure if tomorrow we have 10 times the number of people who went through the same programs as I did, we could have 10 more organizations like mine which are pursuing the same objective. Yeah.
Mathieu, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, for the work that you're doing to advance the knowledge and preparing, let's say, entrepreneurs and companies to be bankable, right, and investment ready on the continent. I think it's amazing. It's amazing work, and it's work that we all need. We as entrepreneurs, we are very focused on product building, but we always forget this other part, which is one of the most important, to be able to fund our innovation. So thank you for that, and we can't wait to see where you're going to go.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, and let me take the time to appreciate what you are doing. I don't know if you had the opportunities to also being interviewed to give the same kind of interview you gave, to give the same stories of what you are building, but a lot of people are learning from it outside of here. Yeah. And I will be happy to hear that this story is going outside our borders. Yeah,
absolutely, man. Start a podcast and I'll be a guest.